Good evening. My name is Pablo Bello. I'm the host of Tiempo Latino. Tonight we're being hosted by CTV. We're going to talk about immigration reform. We're going to talk about some of the problems the immigrants are confronting when they are looking for housing. And we have our co-host Raymond Trujillo, who's going to talk about his art and his style. We also have our guest Richard Kessler, a lawyer, expert in immigration law. We have Cindy Hicks, and she's an expert on housing. And well, let me talk about a little bit about the background of the immigration reform. 6 months ago, a group of senators, 4 Republican senators and 4 Democrat senators, got together and draft a proposal to reform immigration law. The law went to the Senate, was approved, and the proposal went to the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, the law stopped there. But let me tell you that this law encouraged many immigrants to go to Washington and demand their rights. And but now let me talk a little bit with Raymond Trujillo, our host, who's going to talk about our culture, our Mexican culture, and what can you tell us,
Well,
Raymond?
my name is Raymond Trujillo. I'm a graphic designer, pro designer, and dance instructor. The places that I teach is at the Art Council in Holland, and it's a group of Mexican folklore dance, and also at the Art and the Crook Center in Granville. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about all the different things that I do, which is my passion, and painting is one of my passions. And here we have on the studio different artwork that I brought so you guys can have an idea. I'm an artist who likes to paint his culture. The things that I do most is more like dance and cultural. The other side of me that I like to paint is a lot of ideas, a lot of different techniques that I like to mix on my media. And some of the paintings that you see around here, you see a lot of self-portraits in different styles. Mondrian is one of my favorite artists. Frida Kahlo, as you see, is in some of the paintings here. I can sense the feeling of a deer and being treated as a cultural way, targeting. I express that way in my paintings. And also about dreams, when you have dreams and you let them go, as you see in this painting that you see right now. Sometimes we have guts or emotions that you keep inside of you, but you never express them. So when you express yourself, and this painting of the butterflies is expressing yourself, let yourself go. Another things that I like to talk about is about dancing. One of the things that I love to do also is dance and how to promote my culture, which is the Mexican culture. And one way that I do it is by showing the Mexican folklore. If you like, I can dance a song so you guys can see what I'm talking about. What kind
Please.
Of have a music.
So Raymond is going to what are you going to dance, Raymond?
This is called the Bamba.
La Bamba. This song is like more than 400 years old in Mexico.
Yes, and the Bamba is like the national anthem for the Veracruz people. And I hope. Oops.
He's looking for the song.
I'm looking for a song, of course.
Here it goes, La Bamba.
And this is part of the dance. And this is
Bravo, bravo.
okay. That was the
First whistle.
that was the bamba, and this is what I teach to my students. And this dance is from I'm sorry, from the state of Veracruz, one of the states of Mexico. And the Veracruz is represented by this song, and the whole nation. Most of the people who hear the bamba, they know this is from Veracruz. Do you have any questions about Veracruz?
Like, it's my understanding the La Bamba has some influences from Africa. From
Africa, Africa, from Spain. The dress, the Veracruz dress is made from the flamenco dress from Spain, which is have the train and have all the ribbons, and also has a lot of rhythm from Africa.
From the slaves from Africa, they were brought to Mexico.
Yes.
The slaves
In
were brought
Mexico,
to not only to United States. They brought slaves from Africa. They brought slaves to Mexico too.
Well, Veracruz is one of the oldest ports of Mexico, which in the past, the Spaniards brought a lot of slaves, and a lot of slaves stayed in the coast of Veracruz. And that's how Veracruz has a different reach of different cultures. You see Japanese people speaking Spanish, Koreans, Spanish.
When
Black people.
Mexico was invaded by French, and there are a lot of French people there too.
Yeah, there's a lot of
descendants from
a lot of people with blue
from
eyes.
French people.
And then also they have the festival in Veracruz, which is all these different nationalities bring their culture and turn it into a Mexican style. And then you have all these different rhythms that comes from Veracruz. Some can be real tropical, some can be real mystical. Like we have the bruja, like I was talking about the other day. La bruja is the witch, the white witch is from Veracruz. And a lot of people when pass through the shore, they see these ladies dancing
On
with
the
a
beach,
candle.
right?
Yeah, on the beach, dancing with a candle at night. And a lot of people think they're witches. But what they're doing is they're the lighthouse for their men, they're fishermen.
They're lighting the way for the fishermen to arrive to the
So the
beach,
fishermen go during the day, and by the time they get back from fishing, it turns dark. So the ladies, they wait for their husband dancing with candles so they know where they're going to land in shore. And that's why they call it white witches from Veracruz, because the ladies are dancing. People that doesn't know what they're doing, they think they're witches. But what they're doing is waiting for their husband, helping with how to bring money to the house. And that's one way, and they make it into a dance, and it's one of the real famous dances from Veracruz also, which is like the bamba. And then we have a lot of different dances. Every state has their rich in culture. So like we have 32 states in Mexico, and every state is divided like in 3 regions, like which is the north and south and the center. And every section has a lot of different costumes, different dances,
Food.
and food too, and color, and I mean language, because they have different. They still have the indigenous dance, how you call it, language?
Languages. Indigenous languages.
And they still, we have a lot of different, well, it's not called language, it's called like dialects.
No, they are
It's a
languages. They're languages.
The languages?
Yeah, and they're also dialects.
And dialects also.
But,
So we have a lot of those. And like I was telling you about Tamaulipas, is the northern side, and it's like the vaqueros. They have the hat, jeans, and the plaid shirt.
That's the north of Mexico, right?
Yeah, and those are the music comes from the polka from Polish and other countries. And then we have the center, which is the indigenous part, and it's called the picota, and it's like all.
This is in Tamaulipas, right?
Tamaulipas.
The north of Mexico.
The north of Mexico. And then we have the other dance called Huapango. So it's divided to different, in every part every region has a different rhythm in the music. So that's one thing that I want to talk about. And also I want to invite whoever wants to learn about these dances and about our culture to visit here in Grand Rapids, to visit the Crack Center in Granville. And the address is 644 Granville
Cook
Avenue.
Center, right?
Yeah, the Cook Center. Well, I call it the Arts because that's how they used to call the Art Center here.
What
in
is the
Granville.
address?
The address is 644 Granville Avenue Southwest, and the telephone number is 616-742-0692. And then from Holland, if people are in Holland, I'm gonna have my paper. In Holland is the Art Council, which is in 150 East A Street in Holland. And the telephone number is 396-3278. 616 is the area code. So 150 East on A Street in Holland.
All right.
Oh, if I can let everyone know, Raymond did, he taught a quinceañera. He's available for hire, and he did a really, really great job. My daughter was part of a quinceañera, a 15-year-old birthday party. And how many kids did he have? Like 16? It was
Yes.
like a lot of kids.
That's another thing that I do. I coordinate parties. I'm a party coordinator and a floral designer. And the part that I do for quinceañeras is quinceañera is like a debutante for American people. Debutante, how you call it?
Well, we have a sweet 16,
Oh,
and
sweet
I noticed
16?
in the Latino culture it's sweet 15.
Yes,
So.
but see, in our culture, what they do is like a mini wedding because you have the big dress, and then you have the mass in church, and you have the big cake and the band, and then the girl. What it is the celebration is about the parents presenting to society her daughter is turning into a lady, so she has to dance a waltz with her father. Then she has to dance a waltz with her peers, and then she has a surprise presents, the last doll, and everything that goes into a party. And then that's my part that I coordinate and teach the dances to. Then at the end, they have a surprise dance. It could be any from folkloric all the way to hip hop, or anything like could be cumbia, merengue, bachata, etc. So that's another thing that I do, and I love to do. Also, I'm a clown for birthday parties. I'm Payaso Mundin, and I don't know if you see me in so
A
different
thousand
places.
things. Huh?
I do. I'm the man of the many tricks, and those are the things that I love to give back to the community, and somehow bring in smiles, and at the same time and bring culture to them. And if you need a clown, or I'm here.
Well, the dance for the quinceañera party, I have to say, Raimundo was so awesome that my 93-year-old grandmother loved it. So, if you want to put a smile on your grandma's face,
That's
and
what.
have Raimundo help with your dancing, and it will go off without a hitch. So,
Well, now we're going to go with our expert in immigration law, Richard Kessler. How are you, Richard?
Good, doing well tonight.
Can we talk about a little bit about immigration reform? Can you give us a background of this?
Yeah, let me follow up, and you did a good introduction. There was last year, the Senate came forth with a version, and this is something that's given even a little bit more history than you went back to the Senate version. This has been going on since really early. The first time I remember talking about a recent legalization or immigration reform was around 2001. In 2006, it came very close to passing. People may remember Senator McCain from Arizona, who ran for president a few years ago, and Senator Ted Kennedy, of course, who passed away about 2-3 years ago and was a long champion, came up with a bipartisan program for immigration reform. And it's kind of recognition that and I've been doing this for 33 years now, that for at least the last 25 years, the program, the whole immigration legal system, legal framework is broken. And everybody recognizes that right now, Pablo. I mean, it's not just Democrats saying that, it's not just immigrants saying it, it's not just employers saying it. Everybody agrees. The only thing everybody agrees about immigration is that the current system is broken. And so for the past few years, and I guess you probably focus on 2006 was probably the first serious attempt in the last few years. Congress has been discussing the need for immigration reform to do a number of things. One thing being to deal with the people that are in the United States at this time that don't have proper documentation. And that can be people that overstayed visas. There's kind of this myth that all these people are people that are from Mexico or Mexico and Central America that came and swarmed across the border unlawfully, either crossing the river unlawfully or crossing through Arizona through the desert. The truth is, it's actually interesting that majority of the people that are here unlawfully right now probably came with visas, which is some type of a print, and overstayed. So we have this one issue, and it's grown, of course, over the years to somewhere there's difference of opinion, but somewhere between 11 and 12 million. Interestingly enough, in the last year or two, because of both increased enforcement that we can talk about a little bit, Pablo, with so many people, over 2 million people have been removed from the United States, deported from the United States since the Obama regime or the Obama took over as president, 5.5, 6 years ago. Plus, because of the economy, we see less immigrants coming to the United States. Now it may change a little bit as the economy gets a little bit better, but it's always been kind of a push-pull thing, people being pushed out of their country. And we've talked about the past on C, I know several times.
But if I may, Richard,
sure.
if I may, I would like to tell you that, I'm an immigrant, Raymond is an immigrant, and we are people like everyone with dreams, with hopes. We have a family to support. We have children. I have a daughter. All these people is coming to this country looking for an opportunity, right? Everyone is coming from for the American dream, and everyone is coming. We want a better life for our family. We want a better life for our children. And
I thought you came here for the warm weather, Pablo. And that's right. That's sort of what I was getting, but it's kind of a push and of a pull. There's two things going on. We see people being pushed out, particularly if you want to focus on Mexico and Central America. And specifically, and I'm sure you know a lot of it, that Pablo can comment on it also, and Mr. Trujillo, some of the things that happened, like, for example, after the NAFTA program, where Mexican farmers particularly were pushed out because the corn from the United States was so much cheaper, so people that produced corn in Mexico could no longer compete. So we see it pushing out. We see people who were pushed out because of the violence in Central America, and now the extreme violence in Mexico. I see so many people now and again, I'm sure you're aware, that have come in from Mexico the last couple of years, not just for the economic reason, which was the primary reason, I would say before, but because of the extreme violence right now that's taking place in Mexico and Central America, which is all part, and I know they've had programs from C about the whole drug war, and it's a very complicated issue, but again, so we see people getting pushed out, and then people getting pulled, like you said, because of the American dream. We've always tolerated, and we've had a need in the United States since baked to slavery for cheap labor. And so people say, especially from Mexico or Central America, I know people, my wife's from Honduras, I was just there, I talked to a guy that works as a security guard, and he works 30 days. He gets 1 day off a month, so sometimes 29 days. He makes approximately, the equivalent in US dollars, $220. So he's making less than $10 a day, and he's working 11 or 12 hours a day. And he has to buy his own uniform with that. Yes. So he can make that much in 1 day, so obviously in the United States doing it. So there's obviously people, even though they don't want to leave their family and their culture and their life in their home country, but are coming here because that's the only way they can make ends meet for themselves and their family.
Yes, I would like to add, like, for example, with NAFTA, when this North American Free Trade Agreement was passed, thousands of farmers that were working on their land, they just lost their income, the Mexican government says, well, we're going to allow these big corporations from the United States flood the Mexican market with their corn, with the produce. And, if you are a farmer in Mexico who has an acre, you won't be able to compete with a big corporation in United States who's going to flood the market with tons and tons of corn or another product 10 times cheaper than the way you produce. So what do? You just leave your land and come to United States looking for a job because, you know, you just lost your way of life, the way you're making money. So what is the option? You hear people, well, United States you can make more money than here. So people is coming here, they are risking their lives. Thousands of Mexicans, thousands of Central Americans are dying on the desert. And also the violence in Honduras, in Nicaragua, El Salvador is pushing the people here. Right now in Mexico there is a big problem with drugs. And who's asking for drugs, you know? The people from the United States is demanding drugs, so somebody has to produce those drugs, and somebody has to bring those drugs here. And unfortunately, this is reality. This is I'm not making up this sad news. This is what is happening. That's why people is fleeing Mexico, because there is so much violence. The narco traffickers are taking over. Like right now in the state of Michoacan, there is so much violence that people is taking arms and defending their people and confronting the narco traffickers. Narco traffickers and people are fighting for narco traffickers are fighting for the territory, and the people is just defending themselves. So Richard, can you talk to us about a little bit like deferred action, for example?
Yeah, that's a great point. What Pablo's referring to as a program, and this kind of gets in what we're talking about the Congress, because and I'm going to be up front with it, the problem we had in the last couple of years has been basically the Republicans refusing to pass any type of immigration reform that dealt with in a progressive, open manner the undocumented people that are here in some type of a legalization, taking them out of the shadow. So because the Republicans defeated this in the last few years, and particularly, for example, in 2006, but again in 2012, there was discussion and the Republicans refused to move on this. President Obama, through what's called an executive action, came up with a program that's called Deferred Action for Childhood Applicants, or the name in short is DACA. Similar, a lot of people may have heard of something called the DREAM Act. And the DREAM Act is a legislative proposal that's been brought forth to Congress for the past, I think we're on 13th year right now, which is a specific program to, for the very least, provide legal status for young people who came here most of the time not on their own volition. Many of them came, I've had cases with people, the children came when they were 3 days old, a month old, 6 months old. Their family, but for the reasons, the various reasons that we were discussing, Pablo, chose to come here, but basically for a better life for them. Many of the children, I've had this situation many times, and Mr. Trujillo's probably seen other people work with the young people, kids that didn't even know they weren't born in the United States until all of a sudden it's time to apply for driver's education, and they say, Mom, I need my birth certificate. And they say, Mijo, son, there's a little problem we have here. You were born, you got a birth certificate for you, but it's from Mexico or maybe from Guatemala. And so these children find out sometimes, most of them are aware, but some of them find out years later. Many of them don't know Spanish or sometimes other language. If I have kids from Korea or from India and other countries, Canada, it's not just people from Mexico and Central America, although the majority probably are in this program. And so at least most people, I call sane politicians, and that, I don't know what percentage that is because there are a lot of them out there that aren't very sane, but recognize at least this group of kids, they've come to the United States, they're going to high school, many of them are going to college, they want to join the military, they're completely loyal to the United States. You know, this is their country for all practical purposes, even though they may have been born a month or 6 months or 5 years in another country and their parents may be from another country. Let's at least provide a way for them to become legal. And even that small program couldn't get through Congress. There was a big vote in 2011, I think. I remember we're fortunate that even in that case, the Republican congressperson from Grand Rapids, who's now retired, Vern Ehlers, maybe it was 2010, I think, was one of the few. There were 6 Republicans that voted for it, but they couldn't get enough Republicans to vote for it, and so it failed. So finally, anyways, the bottom line is President Obama, with a lot of pushing and shoving, and I'll be honest, it was very political. This was before the 2012 election, and he was afraid he was going to lose a lot of the Latino and the immigrant vote because he had made a lot of promises, like all politicians do, that one of the things he was going to do in his first term, in fact, I think I just think it was naivety, I don't think it was purposefully deception, but said even his first year, we're going to pass immigration reform. Well, as people know, that was very difficult, got behind health reform, so it never was passed. So by the time the 2012 election comes about, he's worried that they're not going to get the Hispanic and Latino and Asian vote as they had gotten before. So one of the ways to do it, I mean, part of this is cynical politics, was through an executive action that the White House, as the president and the director, the person in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, came up with a program that let's at least give a temporary status to these young people that met certain requirements. They had to be here before they were 16. They had to either graduated from high school or be enrolled in high school or graduated from a GED. You got a GED diploma or were enrolled in GED diplomas, had to have been here at least 5 years when this program was announced on June 15th of 2012. So there are quite a few requirements. Could not have serious crimes. They may have had just very minor crimes, but they couldn't have serious crimes. They have to go through a finger check and a background check. So this was a great program to at least bring those kids out of the shadows and allow them to continue studying and allow them to get driver's license if they're age and get Social Securities and feel secure in the United States that they aren't going to be deported any day. Unfortunately, that program, and it's a good program, only gives them, again, this, and it's a 2-year period, which hopefully they'll be able to renew. Some people will be coming up in this August for renewals. It kind of freezes their status. Basically keeps them in kind of a legal limbo. Certainly better than not having any status, but certainly doesn't make them permanent residents or give them any permanency in the United States.
I would like to add, Richard, for example, this deferred action is being very good for immigrants.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because a few weeks ago in our show we have one of these young people who apply, and now she's working. Now she's applying to the university. All this talent that we have, all these Latinos that came here without proper documentation, now they are applying to college. They applied to this program. Many of them they never had committed any crime, so they were accepted to this deferred action, and now they are applying to go to college. And it was a very good thing to do from President Obama. And we are grateful for that, you know, because many of these young people, they were just at home saying, well, I'm finishing high school. What am I going to do next year, you know? I don't have documents. I don't have a driver's license. And then President Obama came and said, well, here's deferred action. Apply. If you qualify, you can go to college. You can drive now, and you won't be deported.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's one of the things right now. In fact, there was a 41-page letter that was delivered to the White House today by a national organization called the National Day Labor Network, which is an organization of workers, mostly undocumented, who do these day labor jobs, and there's a lot of exploitation of them. But they sent this document to the White House and to Jay Johnson, the new director of the Department of Homeland Security, requesting that the White House, that Obama propose and pass a rule similar to this, the program of the deferred action, but for other people, not just the young people, but for their parents and their older brothers and sisters and other people that are in the United States that don't qualify for deferred action because of the age, but have been here sometimes as long as 25, 30, 40 years in the United States. And again, have worked hard, have no crimes, many of them bought houses, have business, etc., but are daily threatened with deportation. In the last few years, like I said, we've had almost 2 million deportations. And a lot of those are people that are caught at the border, about half of them, but half of them are people that have been living here for a very long period of times. Every day I talk to people who have relatives that have, the U.S. citizen children or parents, or spouses is very common, and are being removed from the United States mostly for things like, for example, driving with an expired license because you can't get a driver's license, or sometimes don't have any type of even a traffic violation. So people are desperately afraid. Families are being broken up daily. There's an average of, I think, 1,115 people that are being deported every day here in the United States, if you can imagine that, including many, many in Michigan. So what we're asking, and what this national organization is asking the president, is to propose, and not just propose, but to actually execute a program similar to the program for the deferred action for the young people. And the idea kind of is putting pressure on Congress, and President Obama said on a national chat on Friday, somebody asked him about this, and he said, if the Republicans in Congress don't want to do anything, it's obviously, we'd much rather have a permanent program done through Congress and that he can sign that becomes a permanent law. But if, certain members of Congress, and particularly Republicans, for whatever political reasons and racial reasons don't want to do this, then I will start thinking about doing something. And we're saying, people that are advocates like me and other people in organizations and people like Cindy and Pablo and people that have been working on this for many years are saying, President, you have to take responsibility because enforcement has been at a highest level under your regime, under your presidency than any other, than President Bush, than President Clinton. And this is a good argument that President Obama can tell people. There's been a lot of criticism in the past by people that say, well, we can't pass a quote, and they use the term amnesty. I don't really like to call it an amnesty because it's not just saying, hey, we're going to forgive you. People have to go through a lot of steps to get this, and most of these people haven't committed any crimes except that they've stayed in the United States longer than they're supposed to, or came in because they couldn't get a visa to come legally in the United States, and these people would be paying fines, they would be passing background checks, they would be learning English, they would be learning American civics, they would have to go wait several years, they'd have to pay more taxes. So it's a pretty involved program. So it's not just all of a sudden a magic wand and you're going to be a citizen in the United States. So it's not really what I call an amnesty. But the people that have been opposed to it, and you can hear them all day on talk radio if it doesn't make you sick, but their line is, these people are lawbreakers and we've tolerated breaking the law, and they've criticized this deferred action. It's terrible that this, quote, imperial president, Obama has went behind the democratically elected, this is a small d, they don't like the big D, Democrat, Congress, and has passed these programs because, we the people don't want these programs, we don't want these lawbreakers here, blah, 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 blah. Until there's enforcement of the current law, there's no way we should consider any type of what they call an amnesty, or what I would call a legalization program. And so our response is, you better take your head out of the sand and look at the type of enforcement that's going on, because every day, and of course everybody here sees it, and everyone here in this program, and a lot of people I think in West Michigan are aware, we're 2,000 miles or 2,300 miles from the southern border, and every day people are getting picked up from Mexico and Central America. And I will say there's a lot of racial bias in the way what's called the Immigration Customs Enforcement, or what is kind of known now as ICE, or yellow in Spanish, operates, but that every day people are being picked up here in Michigan and deported, and families being broken apart, and U.S. citizen children not being able to see or knowing if they're going to ever see their mother or father again, or spouses. So there's a tremendous enforcement. Again, 2 million people in the last 5.5, 6 years. And so for these critics of any type of immigration reform or legalization to say, we've got to enforce the laws that we have right now. And one of the things that I'm a little bit hesitant about this Republican principles that you were mentioning that came out a few days ago is one of the things they mentioned before we can pass any type of a legalization. They don't use the
Richard,
word legalization program.
let me make an announcement.
Sure.
We need phone calls. We need you to call the program. The phone number is 459-4881. Please call us and let us know what you think about immigration reform. What do you think about immigrants? They are picking your apples, your vegetables, your salad that many people love, you know.
Any
You know,
comments?
Teaching your kids how to dance.
you know, Raymond is teaching your
Dancing,
children how to
if you have
dance,
questions, where-
Translating.
uh,
for you.
interpreting,
Yeah, translating.
and you know, many of the immigrants work on the field apples. You know, they pick up your apples. They pick up their vegetables, their broccoli, their blueberries. Blueberries. You like
Big
blueberries?
Michigan
They
crowd.
are.
Any comments, any questions that you have? Free, you know,
Please
yeah.
tell us what do you
Give
think.
us a
You know.
call, 459-4881.
Yes, and I would like to add, Richard, many Mexicans, many Central Americans work on the fields here in West Michigan. You know, if you are wondering why the fruit is so cheap, why the apples are so cheap, because some immigrants are picking up for you these vegetables.
Can I actually make a comment?
no-
20% of the apples this year dropped off the trees and rotted because we didn't have enough immigrants. So the apple farmers this year really suffered. I mean, I think
Yes,
Richard can highlight because of the immigration.
Although I do want
loss.
to I'll differ a little bit with you. We can't always agree about everything, Paolo. I do want people to know why agriculture, there are a lot of immigrants and a lot of undocumented immigrants. I do want people to know that immigrants, and even if we want to say immigrants that don't have proper documents, it's not limited to just agriculture. Neither in West Michigan or in California or in Texas, but there's people doing all kinds of jobs. Both at the high-tech level, we see a lot of problems with immigration, that people can't become legal or can't go from temporary to citizens, and high-tech programs that we need that generate jobs, and also in all kinds of areas, in construction, in hotels, in restaurants. It's all kinds of areas. In other agriculture areas like the dairy industry now is predominantly immigrant in Michigan and Wisconsin and California. So, well, I agree. I mean, apples and blueberries are big here, and they historically have used immigrant labor, particularly from Mexico. You know, there's all kinds of areas in the economy, and we've shown, there's been statistics that have shown studies about how much the economy will grow. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars if we take people out of the shadows, legalize them, make sure that they have proper Social Security numbers, they're able to properly pay the taxes, what they want to. Sometimes now, a lot of times, you can't properly pay the taxes because you can't get a proper Social Security number, and there's problems using there's some type called an individual taxpayer ID number, but it's very complicated. So we have an underground economy which is hurting the regular economy, and we know that if we bring these people out of the shadow, and like you were saying with the young people now in the DACA, many of them now are both going to school and working. And so now instead of them maybe working at a restaurant under the, you know, what they call under the table and getting paid cash or something like that, which doesn't get into the system and is paid much less, now they're able to work legally. So there's a very strong economic argument. I don't know if people also saw Governor Snyder, and I'm not a big fan of him for a lot of other reasons that we could spend a couple of programs on, but one of the things he did mention at his State of the State of Michigan address was he wants Michigan to be more of a state of immigrants and how much immigrants can help. Of course, he's looking at big investment, but he was able to highlight how immigration helps the economy. And I wish he would have talked a little bit more about agriculture. He was the opposite of you, Pablo. He didn't talk about agriculture. He talked about
He's
other
going to
things
ask for 50,000 visas, right?
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I don't know if that's really, there are visas. I don't think he can, he wants to jump Michigan ahead of other states, to be honest with you. I don't think he can really do that legally, but it's an interesting idea. But he does want to have more visas to bring people, particularly into the Detroit area, but not just the Detroit area.
Oh, I had a question, Richard. Now, the way that I understand visas, you can't really assign visas to one location and say, well, we want visas and just for people to live right here in Detroit. I mean, that's not really.
Yeah, no, you can't necessarily do it. What he, I think, was talking a little bit about, there's something called an investment visa, where if you invest a certain amount of money, It can be as low as $500,000, and you can get a green card. So some people don't think that's fair. That's a whole different question, that you can buy a green card, but you really can't. Or $1 million if you're not in a high unemployment area. And one of the things he wanted to do was to try to create a center in Detroit, and I think more in eastern Michigan, where people could invest and bring jobs and bring investment money into Michigan. But yeah, you can't necessarily say that there's just a visa just for Michigan.
He
Right?
created a new office for legal immigrants,
Yeah,
right?
it's called the New Americans Office, I think. I don't know if people know Bing Goy, who is a local business person who owns a very nice and large floral business and has done a lot of work with diversity in West Michigan.
What is that office about?
Well, it's about encouraging immigration to Michigan and try to get people to invest, immigrants from outside of the country to invest, and to try to create a welcoming environment so people will come, immigrants, and invest money. It's mostly, I'll be honest with you, it seems to be geared, Raymond, to the investment type immigrant. Although hopefully it would, and people have talked to Governor Snyder, and I'll give him at least some credit. He said on the record that he supports immigration reform, which includes legalization for everybody. But most of these programs that he's talking about, Raymond, and I believe the program that Bing Goy from right over here, he's got his office over here by my office on Valley Street, on Butterworth Street. And he's going to be the director of this program. He's an immigrant from, I think, Indonesia, came here many years ago. Is geared mostly at trying to get immigrant money and investment into the state of Michigan, and how that can generate more jobs for everybody in Michigan.
So, Richard, what's going on? Are we going to have an immigration reform?
Well, I'm an optimist. I'm a person, well, you don't got any glasses, you can let it half. I'm a half full person. So I think the fact that the Republicans are at least talking about some type of immigration reform, which includes legalization, although you got to get behind the language they use, which is pretty nasty, which is like people that have lawbreakers, they talk about lawbreakers and stuff, and illegals, and you got to get past some of the semantics, the words that they use. But at least they're talking about a program where they can come out of the shadows and become legal, because 5 years ago, most of these conservative Republicans were talking about massive deportation. And even 2 years ago, you may remember, I don't know, when were the 2012 elections, I guess 2 years ago, year and a half, Romney was talking about, he used to be a moderate on immigration. He's an interesting person to look at politically, because he was a moderate when he was in Massachusetts, which is kind of a liberal state, and welcomed immigrants. And then somebody told him, oh, you'll get more white votes in different states if you become more anti-immigrant. And he jumped way to the other side and talked about something which was that self-deportation. Let's make things so hard that immigrants will just want to go back on their own.
Yeah.
And
They
of course,
also
we
call
saw
that-
that program
yeah.
didn't work. Yeah,
They call it attrition.
yeah, or by attrition, they'll just
What
give up
about
and
now?
stay.
They are talking about the principles.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. The principles, I look at the principles as kind of the glass is half full, because at least they're talking about now in their principles dealing, instead of just deporting everybody, Pablo, realizing that that's not a solution. So we got to legalize the people who are here. So I see this as a half victory, that at least they're going that far. Other people have criticized and said it still has so much nastiness to it, and still they talk about, for example, until we get a certain level of enforcement, we're not even going to look at legalization. And it's so, I mean, how much more enforcement could we have? I mean, I guess they could do this wall that they want to do, and make it 500 feet high, I guess, and, across the southern border, and make it so, sealed so that nobody could go back and forth. I mean, these ridiculous things.
They're talking about security on the border, right?
Correct,
One
yeah.
of the conditions to.
And that's what I'm talking about. And so that bothers me a little bit, Pablo. And so some people have got so upset by the fact that they keep talking about enforcement, and said, we don't even want to deal with the Republicans. I think that's a little bit silly. I think we have to deal with them, because that's the only way you're going to get a law passed. You have to get some Republican support, and we should be pushing them, hey, now that you have agreed that we have to at least legalize people, let's come up with a realistic program.
I think one of the things that, Governor Snyder and Bing Goy really need to address, that if you want Michigan to be a welcoming state, people need to have driver's license. And again, I explain to people that ultimately it's like I'm sure you can understand the frustration, like you're starting to see that it'd be really frustrating if you had to get your child to a doctor or to school and you couldn't have a license and you had to choose between getting them, you know, the medicine they need at the doctor's office or getting separated from them permanently just to get out in your car. And I think, you know, Michigan can't really be a welcoming state if we're not willing to give driver's license to people, which ultimately becomes a housing issue. And as you know, you know, even when new immigrants are coming here, even investors, it takes time to get ID. You know, people don't just get a green card that fast, I think, even with money.
I would like to add, like, one more time that, you know, we are immigrants, we are coming here to work, no? We are looking for a better life. We want our children to enjoy the privileges and the wealth and everything that you have in this country. That's what I want for my daughter, you know. And we are not here to take your jobs. We are here to do the jobs that nobody wants to do.
What all these economic studies indicate, Pablo, is that it's really a win-win situation if we legalize people. And if we come up with a program for new immigrants to come either as permanent residents, that makes much more sense in the current program, or even for temporary employment so that it's realistic and it really is tied into the needs in the economy, that everybody would benefit, absolutely. And so it's not that, well, if we give, you know, 8 million immigrants legalization, then that means 8 million, you know, U.S. citizen-born people are going to lose their job. It doesn't work that way. And the studies show that it actually increases and helps the economy and grows jobs. So that's one thing we wanted to emphasize. I did want to go a little bit more from one of the things that you were saying, Cindy, which is kind of so ironic and it's really a funny thing on this whole driver's license issue, is that by denying driver's license to the people based on their immigration status, what we've created now is more unsafe conditions. We've got more people driving without driver's license, so we don't know who they're using false documents to get driver's license, driving without insurance, and instead of, like some states now, for Illinois, for example, just recently passed a program, and you still have to show who you are. You need to have your birth certificate. You need to get a passport from your country, which isn't easy to do. You have to show who you are. You have to pass the test. You have to show where you're living in the state. So it would be a very secure program, just like the regular driver's license. You know, so that people are then driving here legally, that we know they passed the test, we know who they are. It's crazy that what we did a few years ago when we took driver's license away and said if you're not here legally and don't have a legal employment authorization, you can't get a legal driver's license. So we forced people to break the law and to use false identifications or to drive without license. So that's you're right. That's an interesting issue, and it's one of the issues that we need and can be addressed, you know, at a state level. I think it's going to be hard in Lansing. I'll be honest with you again, because the Republican control of the state Senate and the state House of Representatives, and even if we have a very moderate pro-immigrant governor like Governor Snyder, unfortunately, I don't think he can get the state Senate and the state House to pass this. But it doesn't mean something that we can't keep pushing and keep talking about, because it's a terrible situation, like you say, that you force yourself, you're afraid. Like I had a young woman, she was driving to work today because she has to work, and she slid off and got in a little accident because of snow, and she called me and she was terrified because about 2 years ago she had a ticket for driving with an expired license, and I told her be very careful because the next time you might go to jail, and if you go to jail they'll call automatically. There's this compact, this agreement that the jails have to, in Michigan, in most every state, with the immigration naturalization or immigration customs enforcement with ICE. So they send all these names, and so this woman called me crying, what do I do? Should I wait for the police? And I said, calm down, you got an expired license. I'm sure, this was the Grand Rapids police, they're not going to arrest you, they're not going to take you in, so just sit tight and stuff, don't run, you're going to create more problems. And they just came and gave her a ticket, but she was terrified because there are these cases. Grand Rapids were a little bit luckier, and Holland and Wyoming are also places where the local police are pretty good, that they generally don't enforce immigration laws by themselves and don't generally arrest people as long as it's for minor cases and they can determine, like through expired licenses or passports, who the people are. But anyways, that's a whole big issue. We get any phone calls, Pablo? I don't know. Is anybody listening today or all watching basketball?
Well, we have less than 10 minutes. Please call us 459-4881. Please call us, let us know what you think about immigration reform, what do you think about immigrants. We are here to get a better life for our children. We don't want to take your jobs because most of the immigrants work on the fields. And we have a show in Spanish. Tiempo Latino is usually in Spanish. Today it was a special edition. We have a website, GrandRapidsTiempoLatino.com. Please visit this website. It's in Spanish. And once in a while, I write a story in English for the public, for the English speakers. And please welcome the immigrants. You know, we are good people. We are here to do good in this country. You know, and I like to always give the example of the children, the young people, they took the Deferred Action Program. You know, these young people are very excited right now that they are going to college. They are working very hard to get good grades. They usually work part-time and go part-time to college. And most of them are excellent students. And they just have the same dreams than your children, you know. They want to get a degree in journalism, engineering, arts, whatever your children want to get, and do the best with their lives.
One thing that I want to mention is that as a Latino, we have to work 3 times harder than anybody in the country, American, because you have to show that you can be able to maintain the same level of any American. So you have to work and, like I said, 3 times harder to be almost like be treated like anybody.
Yeah, and if I can mention, like even about mortgages, kids that are working, in order to get a mortgage, you have to file your taxes for 2 years. And as you know, the Deferred Action Program is only good for 2 years. So even though we have kids that are working, paying taxes and the Social Security, and they're going to school, and they're, you know, contributing to society, and sometimes even like buying cars, paying insurance, we're still like far behind in the housing sector, not allowing these kids to buy into real estate and the whole American dream. And I had a quick question for Richard, if I may. How long does it take someone to get their green card if they are an investor? Like how
The
long?
investor program varies, but the fastest probably 6 to 8 months if there's what's called a direct employment type visa. So they invest in a program that's going to create new jobs. It can also take as much as a year and a half. So it has a lot of paperwork, and people have to show that they're investing at least for the permanent residents for the green card $500,000. There's a separate program for lesser investment with certain countries that have treaties with you.
I just wanted to throw that out there because,
Sure.
you know, Michigan's tightened down so much on those driver's license, and again, it keeps bumping into housing. So you have an immigrant that's coming to Grand Rapids, they want to invest, they want to, you know, lease a commercial space, you know, and I'm really trying to reach out to other housing professionals here to say, hey, you know, if you're all just about a driver's license in Michigan and a Social Security card to rent or lease your establishment or commercial space, we're going to really axe ourselves out of those great investors or, you know, immigrant families that are looking for housing. So thanks for letting me mention that. And I'm glad Richard could point that out. So again, you know, if Michigan wants to be truly welcoming to immigrants.
We're almost done with our time. We want to thank you, all the audience that is watching us in your house. Thank you for letting us inform you about immigration reform and many of the problems that immigrants are confronting. You know, many immigrants don't have driver's license. They had to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars in fines because they can get a driver's license. This is something the governor and the government and the Secretary of State should do something about it, because people is just You know, they work so hard for their money. They work so hard in the apple fields and the blueberry fields to make $10 per hour or less than that. And then they are stopped by the police, and
It's very hard.
they pay big fines, $200, $300 in fines. Well, once again, this is Tiempo Latino, hosted by CTV, and thank you for having us tonight. Thank you, Mark, and thank you to all the crew that is helping us tonight. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Raymond. And thank you, Pablo.
Yay!
Well, thank you. I just want to say that if you guys have any questions, you can write. What is the address here?
You can
write us at Tiempo Latino and have any comments and things that you want to see in the future. And thank you for let us have this time in the show.
You can write to Pablo Bello hotmail.com. Send us your comments, send us your whatever you want to say us, your ideas, what do you want to see in this program. Next program is going to be a more pleasant topic. Thank you very much.
Yay! Awesome.
The last thing I did want to mention, we got an extra 20 seconds for people that are watching, is immigration reform is going to be a big issue in the next couple of months. And I urge people to call, email, write, stop by Congressman Amash